to open the case for the opposition.
As someone who works on surrealism, I find myself very much in sympathy with Dr. Jackson's cartography of the weird, and it may in fact be the case that the provocative form in which this notion has been couched actually belies a degree of commonality between the arts and sciences, which brings me to the problematic character of the better than that Dr. Jackson also spoke about, and it won't be my objective, at least, to reverse the terms of the motion and to claim that arts and humanities are in some manner better than science, rather that the two are different and perhaps complementary and perhaps both equally necessary. Now, being a rather unspontaneous person, I've written down what I have to say, so please excuse me for that. In 1956, C.P. Snow famously coined the term two cultures to refer to the social, cultural, and intellectual separation of science from the arts and humanities. Snow lamented what he saw as a ruling elite in Britain, schooled in the traditional humanities, but ignorant of science and complacent in its sense of superiority, when in fact science was radically transforming the world. Nowadays, the boot is firmly on the other foot. In a world of deregulated capital, where profit is the ultimate criterion of value, science is viewed as a driver for, quote, wealth creation, while increasingly the arts and humanities are derided as useless and irrelevant. This is true within the academy, as it is for the society at large. Snow's dichotomy of science and the humanities as opposed and mutually uncomprehending spheres of knowledge is enshrined in the layout of this university, divided from north to south by Oxford Road, with sciences to the east and arts and humanities to the west. And as I observed wearily to another colleague just days before I agreed to take part in this debate, the sciences definitely hold the whip hand. In such circumstances, who would dare dispute that science is better than the arts and humanities, and on what possible grounds? Well, you won't be surprised to hear that I shall attempt to do so. I will be drawing on my training as a medical doctor before studying art history in order to argue that science and the arts are not better or worse, but different. The next section I've called Do No Harm. Art history, which I teach at the university, is not infrequently singled out for its complete and utter uselessness, whereas in medicine, my sense was that I was doing something, worthwhile was never, ever put in doubt, and I expect it's the same in quite a few areas of scientific endeavour too. When I enrolled to study art history, the director of the Courtauld Institute, Michael Kaufman, gave a welcoming speech in which he rather defensively sought to justify the subject by saying that at least it caused no harm. At the time, I dimly recognised that for a Jewish intellectual, the injunction to do no harm perhaps carried more weight than it did for me, but even so, I felt let down. When, last month, as the new head of subject, I was welcoming students to our department, I tried to offer my audience of would-be art historians a more affirmative justification for their chosen subject. I pointed out that art history fosters critical thought, a transferable skill that carries over to other walks of life. I suggested that the study of cultures alien to our own in other times or places helps build a more tolerant world. To be able to see the world from another person's perspective is a challenge that cultural history constantly makes. Oddly, though, the demand to do no harm has always stuck in my memory, maybe because it resonated so clearly with what is supposed to be the first principle of medical practice. As a sort of thought experiment here, I want to cling on to this minimal criterion and see how far it can get us in evaluating the terms of this debate. Now, my next section is called Technology as Pharmacon. I've probably got about a minute left. The term pharmacon comes from Plato. One of the things one quickly learns as a junior doctor is how hard it is not to do harm. At least in part, this potential for harm is intrinsic to the very means with which one sets out only to do good. Take almost any pharmaceutical drug. If you trouble yourself to read the small print, you will discover an alarming list of side effects for even the most innocuous medication, generally culminating in something quite worrying like death. I want to suggest that in this respect, medicine provides us with an apt model for science, at least in its instrumental technological applications, as holding simultaneously the potential for good, but also an unpredictable and thus not altogether controllable capacity to cause destructive harm. Atomic science offers us a stark illustration of this duality, promising an inexhaustible supply of low-carbon energy, but at a price that in the aftermath of Fukushima one scarcely needs belabor. At stake today is not just a sick patient on a hospital bed, but a sick planet. The other day I switched on the radio and heard a discussion about various technological solutions to global warming, such as shooting vast numbers of mirrors up into space to deflect the sun's rays. A moment's sober reflection soon showed that none of these utopian schemes was feasible. They all belonged more to the realm of science fiction than scientific reality. The problems that currently threaten us are a byproduct of 150 years of industrial technological development, for which science alone does not hold all the answers. Only in homeopathy can you cure like with like. Building a sustainable future is an ethical as well as a practical project, and thus requires consideration of human purposes. For this, the humanities, in addition to science, have an essential role to play. Now, in conclusion, let me come back to the state of universities now. If wealth creation, for the benefit, don't forget, of the 1%, were such a self-evident good, why would students have to be actively discouraged from studying arts and humanities? Nothing, I would suggest, infuriates policymakers more than that so many of our brightest young people persist in wanting to study so-called useless subjects, art, literature, philosophy, history, so on. That, to my mind, is a compelling argument in favour of our case that sciences are not better than arts and humanities. Thank you.